Hi, everyone. I'm Michelle Jobin, and you are listening to Time to Talk, a podcast for caregivers. This podcast is dedicated to helping family caregivers in Ontario. Through expert tips and resources, you will gain knowledge and validation for the ups and downs that come with caregiving. More importantly, you'll learn that you're not alone. It's so important to take this time for yourself. We're glad you're here. Today, we're joined by Bill Willis, a dedicated husband and caregiver to his wife, Lynne, who is living with dementia. With years of executive experience, Bill has a deep understanding of navigating complex systems, both in the workplace and in caregiving. His expertise has been instrumental in implementing the Ontario Caregiver Organization's Essential Care Partner Support Program at Lakeridge Gardens, a state-of-the-art long-term care home. As a passionate advocate for caregivers, Bill also serves on the board at Seniors Care Network, working to improve support for families like his. Bill, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you for having me.
Really looking forward to hearing more about your story and the initiatives that you work on. We always want to create this space on Time to Talk where our caregivers can connect and share, and hopefully the people that are listening at home or in the car or wherever they are can find a little bit in your story that they can relate to and feel seen and heard. So I wanted to start with talking about your caregiving story. When did you first notice changes in Lynne's memory or behavior, and how did that moment shape your role as a caregiver?
So it goes back to 2015. It was our 25th wedding anniversary, and wanting to do something, to mark the occasion a little different. We traveled to New York and saw a couple of plays off Broadway, one on Broadway, two off Broadway, and then boarded the Queen Mary and took a transatlantic crossing to London.
Fun.
And saw Billy Elliot in London. We've always kind of liked musical theater, live theater. So while we were in London, I started to notice that there was just more confusion about time and place than I had expected. I thought that's a little strange. And when we got back, I mentioned it to our son, who at that point hadn't really noticed anything. And I just put it down at that moment to say, okay, it's travel fatigue, it's whatever. And then because my antenna was up, I started to notice some more things around the house. And from that, he came back probably 6 months later and said, hey, I think maybe there is something going on. And that was the start of digging deeper and finding some not so good signs of dementia. Yeah.
So from there, where would you say you realized that you were a caregiver?
Yeah, that's an interesting question. Yeah, I suppose one of them was we have, as I like to call it, a poor man's cottage in the near north, north of Lindsay, and she had her car there, and was going to come home. I was going to stay up for a couple of days longer, um, and she was going to call me when she got home.
Mm-hmm.
And she hadn't called, and I thought, well, she should be home by now. So anyway, I called her, and she was at the 401 in Kennedy Road, and I thought, well, that's where we used to live.
Mm.
And at that moment, I thought, okay, this is now. This isn't forgetting where something is. This is now starting to be very, very impactful. And it was really at that moment I packed up and came home. Uh, and that was really the start of thinking, okay, I need to be more responsible for her care now than I had been. Yeah.
How does that change your relationship with your wife once you realize that your role is now not only as husband, but as caregiver as well? They're intertwined, but they are different as well.
Yeah, and that it was I think I slid into that transition. I didn't really even recognize that there was a transition until a friend pointed out one night we were out for dinner with friends, and by that time, I had actually she would look at a menu, and I would end up ordering for her. I would say, does the chicken look okay to you? And she would agree. And by the time a waiter would come, she would have forgotten what she was going to order, and I would order for her. It was actually a friend pulled me aside after that and said, you don't seem to realize how much she's depending on you. And that turned a light on. And because I hadn't, I kind of just slid into the role and did what I had to do. But yeah, that kind of turned the light on to say, okay, this is now gone to a different level.
You speak about being out with your friends, and it's nice that you have a network that noticed that and pointed that out for you, and that I think that's helpful, and hopefully that indicated that you have some support as well. But when you're in a caregiving situation, often a lot of people will say, let me know if you need anything. I'm here. Let me know if you need anything. But can you think of perhaps a moment where you really did need help and you didn't get it? And maybe is there some advice that we might give to people that are the let me know when you need anything sort of situation?
Yeah, and well, frankly, I'm the world's worst at reaching out for help. And that whole denial piece comes into to focus. And I didn't reach out.
Mm.
I leaned on our son for sure, and fortunate that he's local and is able to help and recognizes often before I recognized I need help. He would jump in. Um, yeah, again, I was really late to the support world. Um, she was virtually getting ready for long-term care before I got involved
Mhm.
with the Alzheimer's Society of Durham or uh, home and community care. And some of that had to do with pandemic times too, where there wasn't care available.
Mm.
And for our situation, the pandemic actually helped because I was still employed, still working, and because there were travel bans, I couldn't go anywhere. So I was in the house. Now I've worked from home for 15 years or more. So working from home wasn't something new, but not leaving home to go to Vancouver was something new. So the pandemic kind of helped us. And again, it's unfortunate and fortunate that it was pandemic time because I was just home, and that allowed me to provide care here without even really realizing I was providing care. I'd cook all the meals, of course, all the groceries. So it just, there was no other options at that time.
If Time to Talk, a podcast for caregivers, has resonated with you, consider following, sharing, and rating this podcast. Your support helps us reach more caregivers who need encouragement, support, and validation. This podcast is brought to you by the Ontario Caregiver Organization, here to support you every step of the way. And now, back to our episode. So it is good. So you were getting to the point where your son recognized that you needed help, and you maybe needed external help beyond that as well. Because I'm assuming, it's good on one side that you're home, but then of course you're doing everything while you're
Right.
at home as well. So
Right.
you did get to the point where you figured that you needed help
Right.
beyond the care you were able to provide at home.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. Yeah. And reaching out to the mechanisms that manage that care was difficult and a struggle. And some of that came from an expectation that I had that both Lynn and I had reasonably serious health issues, and both recovered well. And I can't tell you how well I was cared for through heart surgery and her cancer surgery. Um, and I expected the same level of support and care with this new challenge,
Mm.
uh, and was shocked at the differences between what I experienced in healthcare and what I experienced in the elder care world. That was a bit of a wake-up call.
Can you touch a little bit more on now that so your wife is at Lake Ridge now, and is that the first facility that she was in? No.
No.
Let's talk a little bit about that. And I know that caregiving is such a deeply personal and often unpredictable experience. Can you share a little bit of a moment that shifted your perspectives on what caregivers need or anything that happened that sort of changed the course of how you went about in terms of Lynn's care?
Yeah, and I was very, very fortunate at one point to have a palliative care team come and visit with me here in the home. And when they first suggested that, my family doctor suggested that we consult with this palliative care unit, I thought, no, that's too early. That doesn't make sense. And then came to understand that palliative care doesn't necessarily mean end of life care. It just means a different level of care. And he came here, and he was a lovely man. I won't say his name, but and during that time, I wanted to see me in the kitchen, and I thought, okay. So I walked in the kitchen, and he had some pretty harsh words for me, which kind of made me step back. And the harsh words basically were, you think this is going to get better, and you're fighting to make this better. He says, and I'm going to tell you that this is not going to get better. It just gets worse from here. So you need to start thinking about how you can best care for your wife without trying to make this better. And at that moment, it changed. The light bulb came on. I thought, okay, you're right. And that started a journey for both of us that I became more focused on exterior supports, on trying to hold a system accountable, trying to hold people in the system accountable. And when I took it from, as I tell people, when I took it from my heart and put it in my head and said, okay, if this was a business arrangement, how would I manage this? And I would manage it by documenting it. I'd manage it by holding people accountable. And when they're not accountable, I would go right back at them with the documents. And that's what I had to do to get her care, was to say, here's what the legislation says, here's what my expectation is, here's what you've done, and they're not matching up. So how do we fix that? Rather than being that upset husband, I had to be very clinical and very businesslike about what we did.
So I take it that not at all times that you felt like your expectations were being met for care, because it's a hard thing to take the responsibility of caregiving for someone you love off of your plate and hand it over the bulk of it to someone else. Or were there any moments during that journey where you realized, okay, I need to get in there and fix this for a particular reason, and shift course perhaps?
Yeah, consistently. And the flaws in the system, if you will, come to light as you go through the system, and not having any experience in it, it comes unexpectedly. So just a quick example. So in November of 21, we were home. She was not well. You could tell she wasn't well. And I thought, okay, she's got a fever. This is not tested for COVID. It wasn't COVID. She just was not well. So it got to the point I had to call an ambulance for her, and off to the hospital we go. So I alerted the folks from, it's now called care at home or home care, whatever it's called now. At that time, it was the Lynne. I notified our contact at the Lynne, and was immediately told, oh no, she's now in the hospital, so there's another support person for that. Okay, so I contacted her. And then she was transferred from Lake Ridge hospital to another Lake Ridge facility. And my expectation would be that the care coordinator would be the same person. And it wasn't, because you're now in a different facility. It's a different care coordinator. So we got to go through all that again. And then she was transferred from there to another facility in Oshawa. And now we have another care coordinator. And then finally, she was transferred to Lake Ridge Gardens. So we managed to get through 6 different care coordinators in less than a year. So the continuity that you would hope would be in that system for me wasn't there. And that caused all kinds of issues and concerns.
Yeah, I can imagine that would have been a frustrating process to go through that 6 different people without having that continuity of care. That must have been challenging for you.
It absolutely was challenging. Yeah. Yeah. And not, not to be critical of people that are working the system, they've got their hands full as well. But the pressure to bring her home from the hospital was immense. And that's a terrible thing for anybody to have to go through. The guilt trips and pushing, because they need that acute care bed. I understand the need. But they also have to understand the need that, at some point you recognize that, and I wish this was my line, it's not, but that when you recognize that others are more able to care for your loved one than you are, it's time to let them care for them.
Yeah.
And we'd reached that point.
Is there, I understand there was a point in time that must have been very frightening for you, that Lynne wandered away from where she was staying at the time. Was that at your home, or was that at the care facility?
Yeah, a couple times actually. The worst was here at home. And I had been on a conference call and I had alarms on the door. But my practice was to get up early in the morning before she got out of bed and go for a walk. Just 30 minutes out, go walk to start the day. And when I came home, I was a little late getting back. I had to jump on a call, and I forgot to arm the alarm. I forgot to turn it on. So I got on my call, did the call, and when I went out to see if she wanted a coffee, she was gone. And I had to, of course, I run out the door and I'm looking and I'm thinking, wow, this is crazy. So I called Durham Regional Police. They were absolutely fantastic. I can't say enough about their management of that crisis. And found her. And that was a tough day. And then she got away from me one other time at my place up north. And that was probably more scary because the resources aren't there to support. Fortunately, a neighbor who knew her came across her and was kind of keeping her in one spot until I got there. So, yeah, difficult.
Difficult, I can imagine, but I'm happy in both incidents that turned out well. And I'm assuming that those are part of the things that sort of led towards her now being at Lake Ridge.
Yes. Yeah.
I wanted to talk to you a little bit more, Bill, about the Essential Care Partner Program and the overall value of caregiver inclusion in the entire care process for our loved ones. Can you tell us a little bit more about what the Essential Care Partner Support Program is, and how does it differ from traditional family caregiver roles in long-term care?
Yeah, in the long-term care world, there's kind of 2 ends of a spectrum. There's folks that want to be intimately involved in the physical aspects of care, and there are folks that don't want to be involved in that. I know that when she first went into care, I struggle and still struggle with helping feed her. It's just devastating. Not as much now as it was, but yeah, that emotionally it just tipped me over the edge. So I don't want to be involved in that level of care. I don't. So with the Essential Care Partner, or essential partner care, essential care partner. There's a couple of different acronyms for that now. It allows the care partner and others to outline exactly what level of care they want to be involved in. As an example, there was a young woman there that insisted that she wanted to do her father's laundry. And that essential partner allows that conversation to happen without muss, without fuss. Okay, this is what you're going to be involved in. And it just clarifies the role of those that aren't the POA. So I have a power of attorney and I make decisions. That doesn't mean that I want to be involved in putting her pajamas on. It doesn't mean that I want to be involved in her meal times. And it allows for, in my mind, the expansion of her care team beyond the staff at Lake Ridge Gardens. It allows my son to define what role he wants to play.
Otherwise, I can assume there just must be a lot of assumptions that happen prior to this being in place. So that, oh, this person's going to do this, and then things get lost along the way.
Right. Yeah. And things get missed. So, when I finally had to say, I'm not staying for meals, I don't want to be involved in meals, then it became pretty clear, and it's documented at that point. It isn't just, oh, he's grumpy. It's he has indicated he's not going to participate in meals. So now they can actually plan resources around that. And that helps them to know what role each of us is going to play in her care.
And I can assume coming to this conclusion is why you played a key role in implementing the ECP program at Lake Ridge.
I'm going to just, I think the motivator for me to jump on and really support it was, is this. She had a fall.
Okay.
A pretty serious one. She separated her shoulder and broke a collarbone. Okay. And I got the call. They're sending her by ambulance to the hospital. Fine. I jump in the car. I get to the hospital, and I arrive there, and I met with this locked door, of course. I said, okay, I'm here for Lynne, and she's in pretty much final stage dementia, so she should have a care partner with her, and was denied access. They said, no, there's no visitors allowed in that area of the hospital. And I said, well, if I was a visitor, I would get it. I'm not here to visit. I'm here to support her and answer questions because she no longer has the ability to speak for herself. And that was absolutely not allowed. It was no. So with that, fortunately, because I'm involved in a number of things, I made some phone calls, and they got her moved pretty quickly into an area where I could be with her. But that shouldn't happen.
No.
And that's where hats off to Lake Ridge Health and to Lake Ridge Gardens for stepping forward and instituting this essential partner and care program, because that would not happen if once that essential partner is identified. So even if I'm away, my son is identified as an essential partner, and he would have been allowed access at that point to support her.
Are there any other, and I can see that being the big thing that was the gap in the system that existed that caused you to want to help implement the changes. Are there any other things that you saw as things that should be fixed in the ECP program that were motivating for you?
Yeah, you know what? I honestly think things could have gone further. I think one of the problems is the documentation of the program, and how quickly that happens and how rapidly that can be updated. I think in this world where I can update my bank records while I'm talking to you.
Right.
I think it would be better for everyone if I was able to update those records live in that system. We're a long way from there, but never say never.
Caregivers are often seen as visitors rather than essential members of the care team, and you did mention that. Um, and there does need to be that way to distinguish the difference. What do you think is the overall impact of the mindset where caregivers are just seen as visitors or sort of like a plus one in the situation as opposed to essential for the care of this individual?
Yeah, that's I think that vision is coming. The emotional support. If you had said to me 5 years ago, "Oh, emotional support is important," I probably wouldn't have seen it. But it is important.
Mhm.
I know that she's a happier resident in long-term care when she sees my son, when she sees me, when her sister comes and does her nails. Even though she's not able to speak anymore, you can see the difference in her general being when that happens. And it's kind of fun with the PSWs that support her at Lake Ridge Gardens. And they get a kick out of it when I come. And from down the hall, I'll pull my mask down. She sees my face and she'll get excited. Like a kid almost, kind of shaking and happy, and and they get a big kick out of that. So that is an improvement in her life, as minor as that might seem. But that emotional support for her is important. And by having this program in place, it allows us to kind of expand that so that now not only can they be there and give emotional support, but they can now feed back to the system that, we noticed that she's leaning too much. We've noticed, and the expectation is that will now be noted. It isn't just a visitor kind of going by and saying, she doesn't look well today.
Mhm.
It's an essential partner saying she doesn't look well today. And that will, in my opinion, draw a little more attention to some of the needs that she has.
All family caregivers face challenges, which is why the Ontario Caregiver Organization created the Peer Support Program. This program is a free resource where you can share your experiences with other caregivers to help build your confidence and make you feel more supported by those who understand what you're going through. Go to ontariocaregiver.ca to be matched with a peer mentor today. Remember, you're not alone. Now, back to our episode.
Bill, when we look towards the future and then look from your perspective on what you've already seen and experienced, what do you think still needs to change in long-term care overall for programs like ECP to truly succeed? That's a big one.
It is a big one. Yeah, and your timing is interesting because we've had an incident and resident on resident a couple of weeks ago in a locked ward, like a locked unit, and a resident wandered into another resident's room and then into my wife's room. And there was confrontations surrounding that. So it's interesting that as I started to get into the kind of the TikTok of that situation, there seems to be an acceptance in the long-term care world that residents will wander into other residents' rooms. And I'm kind of starting a bit of a crusade here that says, no, that's not acceptable. And yeah, it's difficult, but that's not acceptable. We've promoted the fact that this is now your home, okay? And in the same breath, we're saying it's okay for a stranger, because everybody to her is a stranger, can walk into your room. I wouldn't let a stranger walk into my home. Why is it acceptable, because it's long-term care, for a stranger to walk into her room?
I would say it's not. Absolutely with you on that.
I would say
Exactly.
it's not too. But it's interesting. uh, because I'm involved in senior care and long-term care issues, I'm surprised that it is acceptable in long-term care. And so your question was a good one and timely in that I think we can do better uh, with that type of thinking. I think we can make this. It's one thing to say this is your home. It's another thing to prove it's your home. So that's kind of the new crusade, if you will.
And an understandable one. And I think it's wonderful that you are, constantly willing to advocate for change. I think that's a wonderful thing. But I think there's a lot of caregivers that maybe struggle to feel heard in care settings. So, do you have any advice for those that might feel sidelined or overlooked when trying to advocate for their care recipient?
Yeah, it's a hard question
Mm,
because uh, and only from my experience, my vision of this thing, okay, is that getting that loved one the care they need is exhausting. Okay. And so many care partners that I've watched, when they get their loved one the care they need, and at some point their loved one passes, they all do the same thing. They kind of throw their hands up in the air and say, I'm ever glad that's over. Now I don't have to deal with any of that. And they move off. And what I've encouraged people to do is don't move off. Don't, because the system almost waits for you to drop off.
mm.
And then now that you've dropped off, they don't have to worry about your concerns anymore. And for me, staying plugged in is important. My wife is well cared for. There's no doubt in my mind. She is extremely well cared for. And I don't believe that's because I'm there every day. I believe that the people in the system want to care for her, and they care for her very, very well. So as that care partner, what can I do to support them in caring for her more efficiently? How do we make that happen? And not just quit. That's hard to do, but yeah. I don't know if that answered your question or
It
not.
does. No, it does. And I mean, this is coming from your lived experience, so it makes so much sense. Um, i- is there an ideal that you could envision for the long-term care system? And if so, what role would caregivers play in it?
Yeah, and I'm sure the people that have had to deal with me in long-term care are tired of me saying this, but you know what? I worked in the sign industry for many, many, many years. Okay. So if you want to know about signs, I'm your guy. What do you want to know? How many lamps are in it? How many lamps should be in it? Okay. But in long-term care, I have no idea. I really have no idea. And um, I'm too old to be educated to an extent that I would be able to have intelligent input into what it should be, okay, or could be. Um, but I can certainly see what a vision of mine would be. And it's just a place where dementia patients are treated respectfully and protected. Okay. The frail are cared for and loved. It's pretty simple. Okay.
Mhm.
Um, and in that advocating role, okay, don't just advocate for yours, advocate for all of them. And that's what I've tried to do. There's been a number of things have come up where they've said, "Oh, yeah, okay, we get it. We'll take care of that. We'll do this for you." And I've said, "No, I don't want you to do that for me. I want you to do it for all of them." Just to kind of give you an example of that. So in one facility that she was in, it was like just post COVID. Vaccines were being around in the building, but they didn't vaccinate my wife. And when I asked, I said, "Well, she wasn't on the list." I said, "Okay." So was anybody else on this floor vaccinated? Well, no, because we're a separate entity. We're not part of the rest of the building. I said, okay, so somebody came here and vaccinated the rest of this building and skipped this floor. Yeah. So that's not acceptable. So I started to make calls and push, and there was an offer to say, okay, yeah, we get it. Yeah, we get it, Mr. Willis. Okay. So if you put your wife in the car and bring her here, I'll come out personally and we'll do it right in the parking lot. We'll vaccinate her in the parking lot. And I said, no, that's not the point. The point is there's 22 people on this floor that haven't been vaccinated. How am I going to live with myself if I bring her and have her vaccinated and leave the other 21 here? That's not right. So that message fortunately got through the next morning. The team showed up and vaccinated everybody. So that is my war cry, if you will. Advocate for all of them, not just yours. Your experience will not be the only person in the world that's had that experience. So have the experience, deal with the immediacy of what's gone on, and now say, okay, how do we push this forward? How do we make this better? Not just for me, but for everybody. How does that happen?
That's how change happens, though. That's exactly it. It's not just if it happens for one person, it's if it happens for everyone.
Right.
Absolutely. What needs to happen, in your opinion, to ensure that the ECP model is more widely embraced in various healthcare settings, such as long-term care homes or hospitals? Because I get a sense from you that at Lake Ridge Gardens, things are working well, but you don't necessarily feel that that's the case everywhere.
Yeah, you know what? And that's a great question. So anytime you do something and in business or in industry, the results are pretty quickly noted, right? You know, your bottom line goes up or down, your sales numbers go up or down. But with this program, how do you monitor it? How do you know whether it's working or not working? How do you know where the tweak needs to be put in? And I think the surveillance of the program could be more robust. It's an important program. We've all agreed it's an important program, and we've made assumptions as to where it is. Okay, what's the uptake? How many people are signing up for the program? How many people see it as being important? What needs to happen to make it more important? How can it be more impactful? And all that comes now, in my opinion, from that data collection side. Whether it be surveys, which are kind of wishy-washy at the best, but in action, how do we prove that we're right, or how do we prove that we're wrong and make the tweaks that need to be made?
Is there one lesson that you can think of that you've made a realization from or learned along the way through your caregiving journey that you wish you knew earlier? And if so, what would that be?
Yeah, get involved a whole lot earlier. Understand the system before the need arises. I didn't get involved with the Alzheimer's Society until she was pretty much going into care. And I regret that because I've had so many positive things happen from that involvement. And whether it was being supportive of me or supportive of her, or just being involved in a group that you don't have to explain this to, that get it. They get the frustration, they get the fatigue, and are able to kind of pick you up when you need to be picked up. So that would be my thing. Get involved, hear the stories of others that have gone down that road, and then be prepared when it's your turn. And not wait till you're on the journey before you even try to understand it. Because that to me was the exhausting part, was saying, okay, now what do I do? How do I manage this? And doing the research and looking online and looking for books, all while you're going through the ambiguous grief process.
Yeah.
Which is mind-numbing, quite frankly. But you can't allow yourself to be numbed to it because you've got all these other tasks and all this other research you need to do. What's the expectation? What's the Long-Term Care Act about? So if you start to look at that before you need it, then you've got a better set of supports around you that can advise you properly. I got some terrible advice from people. And we all do because they they didn't understand the thing themselves. But so that would be my ask for people is advocate for everybody. Get in the trenches before you need to get in the trenches, and you'll be so far ahead as you go down that journey.
Thank you for that. Bill, do you have any stories or anecdotes about your caregiving journey that, made you laugh, where you found some delight, where you found some lighter moments at all?
Yes, absolutely. And there was a couple of them. And one, I was out at I'm involved in the community at some point. I came home from a community meeting. It was late and hadn't had dinner. And I thought, I'm just going to have a piece of toast and a cup of tea and go to bed. And I made the cup of tea and I went to have a piece of toast and I couldn't find the toaster. The toaster was gone. And so well, that's kind of strange. So I looked under the cupboards and no toaster. I looked everywhere for the toaster. And I thought, well, maybe she threw it out. I don't know where the toaster is. So I gave up on that. The next day, it was getting on to like lunchtime, and I thought I should get something out of the freezer for dinner. And I opened the freezer door, and there's the toaster. So, there are some things that happen in this dementia world
For sure.
that you just got to stop and laugh. And the other one that I'm sure the PSWs will be horrified when I tell you this, but when we got the Lake Ridge Gardens, this very, very young, lovely PSW stopped me as I was going into the home and said, "Mr. Willis, we've got great news." I said, "Oh, good. What's the great news?" She goes, Lynne would kill me if she knew I was telling anybody this, but Lynne lost her teeth 1,000,000 years ago. So the little PSW said, "We found Lynne's teeth." I said, "That's great. I'm delighted to hear that." I said, "It's a miracle." And she kind of looked at me. I said, "No, it's a miracle because she lost them 2 years ago." The look of horror on her face that they weren't her, they were somebody else's. And they were so concerned that I was going to be upset. And I said the same to them that I've learned to say through this whole journey is, if that's the worst that happens today, it's going to be a great day. So
Perspective.
Perspective.
Absolutely. Perspective. Yeah. Thank you so much, Bill.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening. We hope you enjoyed this episode. You can access more details about support services on our website, ontariocaregiver.ca. Until next time, I'm Michelle Jobin, and you have been listening to Time to Talk, a podcast for caregivers. We hope you have a wonderful day.